Zen One-Hand Story. In a quiet valley nestled deep in the mountains of Kyoto, there stood an old Zen monastery, built from timber and stone, softened by time, and surrounded by ancient trees. Mist often clung to the temple roofs at dawn, as though nature itself bowed to the wisdom held within its walls. It was a place where silence was not empty, but full of presence, full of awareness, full of peace. Here lived Master Koji, a man who spoke little, but whose silence seemed to hold the weight of mountains. His students respected him not for what he said, but for how he lived. Calm, grounded, and watchful, he walked like a whisper, but carried the quiet power of a storm that had already passed. One spring, a young man arrived at the monastery. His name was Tetsu. He was in his 20s, full of ambition, and his eyes carried a hunger for truth. He had studied many scriptures, debated philosophy, memorized koans, and filled notebook after notebook with interpretations. Yet still, something gnawed at him. He felt empty, not in a Zen way, in a desperate, unfulfilled way. He bowed deeply before Koji. "Master," he said, "I have studied the words. I have learned the forms. But peace escapes me. My mind is never still. I need something more than knowledge. I want understanding. I want to wake up." Koji nodded, saying nothing. For the next few weeks, Tetsu lived at the temple. He swept the courtyards, helped cook in the kitchen, meditated each morning and evening. But his thoughts would not quiet. Even during zazen, as the wind brushed the bamboo and the temple bell rang gently in the distance, his mind would race. What is enlightenment? What is ego? Am I making progress? He craved answers. Then one morning, after tea, Koji handed him a scroll. It was small and simple, containing only 7 words. "What is the sound of one hand clapping?" Tetsu blinked at the scroll. "What does this mean, master?" Koji smiled, bowed slightly, and walked away. Tetsu spent the rest of the day confused. He tried clapping with one hand, waving it through the air, slapping it against his thigh, pressing it to the wall. Nothing sounded right. It was absurd. It was impossible. He asked another monk, who only laughed. "That question is not for your ears," he said. "It's for your mind, or perhaps for your soul." Frustrated, Tetsu began to write in his journal. He theorized that the koan must represent non-duality, or perhaps the futility of rational thought. Maybe it was a symbol. Maybe it was nonsense designed to snap the mind into awakening. He tried meditating with the question. He tried ignoring it. He tried everything. Days turned to weeks. Then, one morning, exhausted and discouraged, he approached Master Koji. "Master," he said, "I've tried everything. I've clapped in the air, against walls. I've meditated. I've written. But I can't find the sound. I don't understand." Koji simply said, "Walk with me." They strolled down a narrow path behind the monastery, where pine trees arched overhead, and the earth smelled of moss and spring rain. For a long time, they walked in silence. Then, as the wind passed through the trees, a single red leaf loosened and began to fall. It twisted slowly, almost like it was dancing. Finally it landed. No sound. Koji turned to Tetsu and asked softly, "Did you hear that?" Tetsu hesitated. "No, it didn't make a sound." Koji nodded. "Exactly." That night, Tetsu sat alone beneath the same tree. He did not try to answer the koan. He did not try to solve it. He simply breathed. He watched the moonlight scatter across the stones. He listened, not for something, but to everything. And something shifted. The next day, Koji served tea. Tetsu bowed and accepted it silently. The tea was warm. The cup was smooth. He felt grateful, for no reason. Koji looked at him kindly. "You search for a sound. But sound is only half the truth. The other half is silence. One hand clapping is not about noise. It is about presence. It is about what remains when striving ends." Tetsu didn't respond. For the first time, he didn't need to. Weeks passed. Tetsu no longer chased answers. He gardened. He swept. He sat. He smiled more. His eyes softened. The question no longer haunted him. It became a companion, a space he carried, not to solve, but to live with. One morning, while walking alone, he paused. The breeze moved gently. He lifted his hand into the air and simply held it there. One hand, still, open. In that moment, something settled in his chest. Not a thought, not a realization, just peace. Koji, watching from the distance, closed his eyes. The young man had begun to hear the silence. That evening, as the sun folded behind the mountains, Tetsu sat by the fire. Koji joined him. I still don't know the answer, Tetsu said softly. But I think I can hear it now. Not with my ears, but somewhere deeper. Koji smiled, raised one hand, open steady. Nothing more needed to be said. And there, in the stillness of a world that had finally stopped asking for noise, the sound of one hand clapping was heard. Not in sound, not in thought, but in presence. Moral of the story: some questions are not puzzles to be solved. They are mirrors to be sat with. The sound of one hand clapping is not a trick, not a riddle. It is an invitation to listen beyond sound, to feel beyond thought, and to live beyond the noise of needing answers. Sometimes, the deepest truths arrive when we stop searching. Sometimes, the loudest wisdom is silence.